There is a moment in Friends that I have watched probably a dozen times. It is not one of the famous ones. It is not a big dramatic scene. It is quiet, easy to miss. Chandler is sitting with the group and someone says something that cuts a little close to home. Something about family, or love, or the future. And before anyone can see it land, before anyone can notice that it actually got to him, Chandler opens his mouth and makes a joke. Everyone laughs. The moment passes, and Chandler leans back like nothing happened. And that is exactly the problem, because nothing did happen. Not on the surface. But underneath that joke, something real just got buried.
You're funny, Chandler! You're a funny guy! You know what else is really funny?
Something that Chandler has been burying since he was 9 years old, sitting at a Thanksgiving dinner table, watching his family collapse in real time. Most people remember Chandler Bing as the funny one, the sarcastic one, the one-liner machine who could diffuse any tension with a perfectly timed quip. And that reading of Chandler is not wrong, but I do not think it is the whole story, not even close. Because here is the thing about Chandler that I cannot stop thinking about. The humor was never really about being funny, it was about being invisible. And once you see that, almost everything Chandler ever did on that show starts to look completely different. I'm curious what you think before we go any further. Do you see Chandler as just the funny guy, or have you always felt like something else was going on underneath all of those jokes? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Let us start with the night his whole world changed. Thanksgiving. Chandler is 9 years old. His parents have gathered the family at the dinner table, and right there, over the turkey, his father announces he is leaving. Not just leaving his mother, leaving for the houseboy, the one who had just offered more turkey in a very feminine voice.
See, Joe, that's why your parents told you not to jump on the bed.
The one Chandler had probably seen 100 times without ever quite understanding what he was looking at. In one meal, everything Chandler thought he understood about love, about family, about what adults were supposed to be, collapsed completely. And he was 9. He had no framework for it, no language for it, no one sitting across the table to help him process it. He just had the wreckage, and so he did what a 9-year-old does when the adults around him stop making sense. He made a joke, and people laughed, and for a few seconds the unbearable thing became slightly more bearable. That was the beginning, and he never stopped. If you enjoy these kinds of deep character breakdowns and the things most fans completely miss, make sure you subscribe. There are many more of these coming. Now here is where I want to slow down. Because most people, when they think about Chandler's humor, think about it as a quirk, a personality trait, something charming that made him entertaining to watch. But Phoebe's boyfriend Roger actually diagnoses it out loud in season 1, in one of the most revealing moments in the whole show. He sits across from Chandler and says, almost casually, that his humor is a way of keeping people at a distance, that his intimacy issues are textbook, only child, parents divorce before puberty. He says it like he is reading from a manual, and the whole room goes quiet. Because he is right, and Chandler knows he is right, and the only thing Chandler can do in that moment is get annoyed and make another joke about it. That scene is almost too honest for a sitcom, because what Roger is actually saying is that Chandler has built an entire personality around not being seen. The jokes are not a way of connecting with people. They are a way of redirecting people. Every time something real gets close to the surface, the humor kicks in like a circuit breaker.
Wow. I'm glad you smashed your watch.
A laugh goes up, and the real moment disappears behind it. Think about how many times this happens across 10 seasons. Chandler gets emotional and deflects with a punchline. Someone asks him a sincere question, and he answers with a joke. Someone gets close to something true about him, and he wraps it in sarcasm so fast that the conversation moves on before anyone can pull the thread. He is hiding in plain sight. The most visible, loudest, funniest person in the room, and nobody can actually find him. And before we get to where the hiding comes from, I want to sit with what it actually looks like day to day, because it is subtle. It is easy to miss if you are not watching for it. Watch what happens when someone asks Chandler a direct personal question, not a surface question, a real one, about what he wants, about how he feels, about whether he is okay. Watch how fast the deflection comes. It is almost mechanical, a setup, a punchline, a sideways look, and then the conversation moves on, and the person who asked never gets an actual answer. Watch how he handles compliments, a sincere compliment from a friend about something real about him, not a joke, not a performance, but something genuine, makes him visibly uncomfortable. He does not know what to do with them. He deflects those too. Watch how he talks about his own future. When the topic of marriage comes up before Monica, Chandler treats it like a punchline. Not because he does not want it, but because wanting something real and then not getting it is the most dangerous feeling he knows. If you never admit you want it, you cannot be devastated when it fails. That is not cynicism. That is armor. And it was built piece by piece across a childhood where the adults kept proving that love could just stop one day. At a Thanksgiving table, without any warning at all. But that is not even the strangest part. The strangest part is where the hiding comes from. Because Chandler did not just grow up in a broken home. He grew up in a broken home with two parents who were each, in their own spectacular way, completely consumed by themselves.
Could we be more white trash?
His father became a Las Vegas drag performer. His mother became a best-selling erotic novelist. Both of them were publicly, extravagantly themselves. And that left almost no room in the story for a quiet kid trying to figure out where he fit. And here is what is fascinating about Nora. Chandler's mother, the famous erotic novelist, is embarrassing to him. Publicly, extravagantly embarrassing. She talks about sex on national television. She writes books with titles that make him want to disappear. She kisses his best friend after dinner. And Chandler handles all of it the same way he handles everything. He makes a joke. He performs discomfort as comedy. He turns his own humiliation into entertainment. But watch his face in those scenes, not the performance, the face underneath it. There is something in there that is not just embarrassment. It is the look of a person who has spent their whole life being the footnote to other people's stories.
Starts to ring. And it turns out it's my mother.
His mother is the headline, his father is the headline, and Chandler is the quiet kid standing just off screen. Learning that when the people around you are too big to see you, you make yourself entertaining enough that at least they notice you, and so he learned to perform. Not in the way his parents did, but perform in the quieter, more invisible way that a child learns when they realize that being earnest gets you nowhere. He built a version of himself that was funny enough to be liked and sarcastic enough to seem unbothered. Just detached enough that nobody could get close enough to hurt him. Now here is where I want to open something up. Because the easy assumption is that Chandler's hiding was a failure, a dysfunction, a thing to be pitied or fixed. But that misses something important, and here is the part that I think most people miss entirely. This worked. For a very long time, it completely worked. Look at the way Chandler moves through the first few seasons of Friends. He is beloved by everyone in that apartment. He is the one everyone laughs with. He is financially stable, holding down a job he genuinely hates for years without complaint, while everyone around him chases dreams and falls apart. He is the reliable one, the consistent one, the one who always shows up. And then there is the job. Statistical analysis and data reconfiguration, a title so deliberately obscure that even his closest friends cannot explain what he actually does for a living. And this detail is played as a running gag throughout the entire show. A joke, funny every time. But think about it differently for a second. Chandler is clearly intelligent. He is clearly capable. He could have done almost anything. And he chose a career so opaque that the people closest to him cannot describe it. A job that makes him miserable, but that he keeps anyway for almost a decade. A professional life that is completely invisible. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. The same man who made himself socially invisible through humor made himself professionally invisible through incomprehensibility. If nobody knows what you do, nobody can evaluate whether you are succeeding or failing. Nobody can see you, and if nobody can see you, nobody can be disappointed in you. The armor was not just personal, it was total. But try to think of a moment, early in the show, where Chandler actually lets someone in. A real moment of vulnerability where the joke does not come, where he just sits with something hard and lets someone see it. Those moments are almost impossible to find. Because the armor is never off. The deflection never stops. Even his recurring relationships in the early seasons are the same defense mechanism in slow motion. The endless Janice cycle. The pattern of getting close and then running. He gets close enough to feel something, and then the fear kicks in, and suddenly there is a reason it will not work. Suddenly there is an exit, because Chandler has never seen commitment survive. He watched the most basic unit of his world, his own family, fail spectacularly. And somewhere in that 9-year-old sitting at that Thanksgiving table is the belief that love is something that ends, that adults leave, that the safer move is always to be the one who disappears first. And then I noticed something that nobody really talks about. The Mr. Heckles episode, Season 2. Their upstairs neighbor dies alone in his apartment, a bitter, isolated old man who chased everyone away. Monica and Rachel go through his belongings and find a photo album full of friends he used to have, and Chandler starts to fall apart. Quietly, in his own way.
Think I can see your scalp.
Don't you just love it?
He looks at Heckles and sees a mirror. He sees the stops on the line he is riding. Bittertown, Aloneville, Hermit Junction. He actually says that out loud. That episode is one of the most honest pieces of character writing in the entire show, and it tends to get remembered as a funny episode. The snake thing, the crazy snake man speech, all of it gets quoted and laughed at. But the comedy is doing what Chandler's comedy always does. It is covering something real. That episode is devastating if you understand what is happening. Because Chandler is not afraid of being alone in the way most people are afraid of being alone. He is afraid that he has already set everything in motion to guarantee it, that all the jokes and the deflections and the premature breakups are not symptoms of someone who has not found the right person yet. They are the behaviors of someone who has quietly decided that love is not something that gets to happen to him, without ever consciously choosing it. This is the wound underneath the wound. The divorce, the parents, the Thanksgiving table. Those things broke something in him, but what the years after the divorce built was something more specific. A quiet, deep belief that he was not the kind of person who gets to have a normal life. That something about him, his family, his name, his strange wiring, made him fundamentally unfit for the thing everybody else seemed to find so naturally. And so he hid. Behind the job nobody understood. Behind the jokes. Behind Janice, who was safe because she was easy to leave. Behind the idea of himself as the funny, reliable, slightly sad background character in other people's love stories. And then Monica happened. Now I want to be careful here, because the easiest version of this story is to say that Monica saved Chandler, that she was the cure, that love fixed what his childhood broke, and that version is comforting. But I do not think it is quite right.
Me and Chandler are coming over to help me put together my new furniture.
Yes, and we're very excited about it.
The thing about Monica and Chandler that most people underestimate is how slowly and carefully it was built. They were not a couple who fell suddenly. They were two people who had been quietly holding each other up for years before either of them admitted what it was. Monica promised him he would not die alone in the Heckles episode. She sat with him in his fear instead of laughing at it. She saw him, not the performance, not the jokes. Him and Chandler, for the first time in his adult life, did not immediately run. But that does not mean the fear went away. Watch how he behaves in the early stages of their relationship. He panics when people joke about marriage. He overcorrects so badly when planning his proposal that Monica nearly walks away entirely. He tells her the concept of marriage is ridiculous. He lets her drive herself to Richard's door before he finally stops performing and just tells the truth. That scene with Richard is the emotional center of everything. Chandler walks into Richard's apartment. Richard is everything Chandler is afraid of being. Stable, successful, confident, the kind of man who never had to hide. And Chandler stands there and says quietly that he is going to ask Monica to marry him. No joke, no deflection, just the truth. For a man who had spent his entire life making sure nobody could see what he actually felt, that moment is enormous.
I just won $1 million.
It is not just a romantic gesture, it is the first time Chandler Bing chose to be visible. And this is the part that changes how you see his entire arc on the show. Because the story of Chandler is not really a love story. Or it is not only that, it is the story of a person who built an airtight, invisible life, and then slowly, reluctantly, terrifyingly let someone see through it. Think about what it cost him to get there. 10 years of deflecting every sincere moment. A childhood full of evidence that the people who were supposed to stay always left. A job he hated that he kept anyway because at least it was predictable. A personality so thoroughly built around humor that he once admitted out loud that the jokes came out before he could stop them, even when he wanted to. He told that to Monica. He told her that when things got emotional, he just could not help it. And she looked at him and said she knew, and she stayed anyway. That is the thing that finally broke through. Because for a person who believed that being seen meant being left, being seen and stayed with was the only thing that could reach him. Monica did not fix Chandler. She did not cure him. But she did something more important. She made it safe for him to stop performing. She made the armor feel less necessary. And slowly, across the back half of that show, you see it happen. The jokes come less often at the wrong moments. The deflections get softer. There is a version of Chandler in the later seasons who can sit in a serious conversation and not immediately escape it. Who can say "I love you" without a punchline attached. Who can be afraid and still move forward. The proposal scene is the proof. Monica begins and cannot finish. She is crying too hard. And Chandler, who had spent 30 years filling silences with jokes, just kneels down next to her and finishes it. Quietly, without the armor. Think about what the show is actually saying with his arc. It is not saying that the right person heals you. It is not saying that love erases old wounds. It is saying something harder and more honest than that. It is saying that the bravest thing a person can do is decide to be visible anyway, even when every piece of evidence in your history says that visibility is where you get hurt. Even when the 9-year-old inside you is still sitting at that Thanksgiving table, watching everything fall apart. Chandler chose every single day of his relationship with Monica to keep showing up without the full armor on. Not because the fear went away, but because he decided she was worth the risk of being seen. That is who Chandler Bing actually was underneath everything. Not the sarcastic one, not the commitment-phobic one, not the guy with the job no one understood, and the parents who blew up his childhood. He was a person who had learned very young that being invisible was safer than being seen. And he built that invisibility so well, so funny, so charming, so entertaining, that almost everyone who watched him forgot the whole performance was really just a kid who needed someone to stay in the room. Someone finally did. And by the time it happened, Chandler had almost convinced himself it never would. He had run the numbers. He had done the statistical analysis, maybe the one time in his life the job actually applied to something real, and the data said he was on the Heckles track, alone. Eventually, he was wrong, and that discovery turned out to be the most important thing he ever found out. That small, quiet correction to everything he had assumed about himself. And it turned out that was all he had ever actually needed to know. That the story he had been telling himself since he was 9 years old was just wrong.